Okay. Yeah, I think that should be better. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Um, Thank you for joining as always. I decided to go live a few minutes early just because we already had some information come out. Um, yeah, I think that audio issue is now fixed and there was a bit of a delay on the comments, so I'll just wait about 30 seconds here. Yeah. Okay. We have audio. That is good to hear. So, yeah, I think this honestly feels like perhaps the most important earnings call we've had with Rocket Lab since I started following the stock years ago. Maybe you could argue when we were waiting for the Archimedes test hot fire, that was just as important, but feels very important right now. Market sentiment is pretty bad. I mean, not just Rocket Lab, but the whole markets. Uh, Obviously, we look at Rocket Lab, we're now down over 15% in the after hours, and we've gone from 30 plus to, well, now 1671 in, what, maybe a month. So obviously, a sharp fall, but when you rise fast, sometimes you do fall fast. And zooming out, yeah, obviously we did rise very fast. Looking back to, September, we were at $6 per share, and now we've been up to 30. Sorry, I guess I haven't really been talking to you guys. I just wanted to say hi before we continue on. Who I guess I won't list everyone's name because there's a bunch of you, but I see Johnny there. Welcome, Johnny, as well as Spielbar, probably pronouncing your name wrong. And Chef, yeah, a lot of you guys, thank you so much for watching the earnings call with me. Always appreciate hanging out with you guys, hearing your thoughts as well, and being able to interact in real time. So do let me know in the comments what you're doing. Are you going to be buying this dip? Where there's so much volatility right now. Like, I don't think I would want to trade this in the after hours just because things are all over the place. I mean, we really have to wait for the earnings call, but we do have some information that's already come to light. By the way, I guess I'll just cover this quickly. If you guys aren't already aware, we had this Bleecker Street research company come out with a short report. So they are already short Rocket Lab stock, and they basically released this report saying why they think Rocket Lab management is misleading and the stock should go down, and they want to make money off that, of course. So no question that they timed the release of their report strategically, and they want the stock to go down as much as possible. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that everything they are saying in the report is incorrect, but we can go through some of that later. I would say there's some stuff in there that I wouldn't put too much stock into. But anyway, there was also this shareholder alert being investigated for securities fraud by this law firm. I don't put a ton of stock into that either, but it's stuff that does move the stock, right? So yeah, going into the earnings today, I didn't have a good feeling about the share price after the earnings call, and we can see it's kind of already not looking great. Although we are kind of bouncing back a little bit off some of those lows in the 16s. Hopefully you guys are doing okay out there, not too heavily margined or something like that. In terms of why the stock is, getting hit so hard, we'll look at this new satellite model later. But let's take a look at some of the numbers. So first of all, 100 and guys, if you remember my prediction video, I predicted $132 million of revenue, and we're at 132.4 million. So pretty accurate there. I mean, I guess I maybe got a little bit lucky, but obviously massive growth. And yeah, I did see the flat sats Francisco. It looks very cool. I do wonder if that's the platform that they'll eventually build their own constellation out of. Obviously makes a lot of sense. Starlink is like a similar flat satellite design where you can stack a ton of them into a rocket fairing and just blast a lot of them into orbit in one go. And, they fit very nicely and fold in there, as opposed to, say, maybe their Lightning spacecraft, which, I thought that would be the big growth driver going forward. But and it clearly will be to some extent with some of these SDA contracts and stuff like that. But yeah, flat satellite also could be big for the future. I find that pretty exciting. Okay, so looking at, I mean, we already knew how many launches they had and all this kind of stuff. Let's jump into the numbers and we can look at some of the other stuff later. So right away, revenue guide for Q1 is lower than it is in Q4, which to me is not shocking because we just went from $104 million to $102.4 million, or sorry, $132.4 million. So a little bit of a retracement isn't too crazy to me, especially in light of the massive growth they had like over the entire year. GAAP gross margin and non-GAAP gross margin, I believe these are a little lower than we were seeing in Q4 as well. Yeah, they were guiding for 32 to 34% GAAP gross margin. So guide a little maybe lower than some people were thinking. Adjusted EBITDA loss as well, 33 to 35 million. A little high, again, not unexpected. They did say in the last earnings call they expect adjusted EBITDA to continue to rise, the amount they're burning as they're working on Neutron. So yeah, let me know if any of you guys are disappointed with these numbers, but seems like a lot of people right now maybe getting flushed out or capitulating, if you want to use that term. And so that's the guidance. Do we have any other firm numbers here in terms of margins? Round out the year with significant advancement across Neutron, Neo constellation. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the new satellite then. My voice sounds low. Okay, I just turned it up a little bit. Let me know if that sounds any better to you. Sorry about that. There's a Twitter video. Interesting. Let's take a look at Rocket Lab Twitter. New contract announced. That's always good. I was hoping for some new contracts. Ooh, Electron and the barge. Sweet render. Okay, 8 launches in 2025 and 2026. That's quite a big contract for them. So that's great news for Electron. Okay, thanks. Thanks for letting me know. That's great news for Electron's cadence in the coming years and a good sign that hopefully they'll be able to hit some pretty aggressive numbers. And I was really wondering when we were going to see some information on the barge. I have been waiting on it. Obviously, they won't need it for their first test launch, but they'll need it after that. So pretty cool picture here of what the barge is going to look like. Can hit learn more. The problem with these earnings calls is you're waiting, and then it's like a flood of information just hits you all at once. And it's like, what do I look at first? Anyway, so the barge is called Return on Investment. I like that name. Yeah, all about Neutron we know about. I wonder, I assume Rocket Lab owns this barge and is not leasing it, which is a question I did have. Yeah, the company has acquired the barge and construction of it will take place throughout 2025. So there's probably a lot of retrofitting they need to do. With expectations of being ready to enter service in 2026, which should be fine because, as we know, the launch that is planned for 2025 does not need a barge. Okay, so that's pretty much it, I think, on the barge. Pretty interesting. Can someone confirm? Okay, yeah, I'm a little... Ruxinator, I don't know. You're freaking me out there, but it sounds like other people do have sound, so maybe it's on your end. Okay, let's see what else. Okay, great to see the Neutron halves together. Nice little video here. Let's check it out. Okay, looks like they are opening all right. Heater back under there. Not gonna lie, I was kind of low-key hoping we might see these fairings sitting on top of part of the neutron structure and maybe have at least one of those halves. What do they call it? Core stage and like upper stage or something like that. One of those halves of it kind of assembled. I guess we're not there yet, but it is a pretty cool video. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Hey, PN Rusty, thank you for tuning in. Always appreciate it. By the way, guys, wow, we have 492 viewers right now. So anyone here who's not already a subscriber, definitely would appreciate you hitting that subscribe button, as it really helps out with the channel, trying to continue to grow this thing. And you guys are already a subscriber. Thanks so much, as always. Okay. Yeah, very cool fairing video. Let's see if we have their PDF yet. So that was the barge, and obviously, we might as well look at some details on this contract while we're here. Very big contract and pretty exciting. And the nice thing is it's very soon too. These launches are not like 5 years out or something like that. And it's, a company they've worked with before, so you wouldn't really expect any issues there. So brings the total number of booked dedicated Electron launches for IQPS to 8. So they already had an order. So I guess that's not actually 8 new launches. Across both bulk orders, 6 missions scheduled for 2025, 2 in 2026. So that's a lot of missions right there for 2025. That's like, over a third of their entire 2024 manifest in just one customer. The new deal is one of their largest to date, second only to Rocket Lab's 10 launch deal with Synespective, which was obviously a very big deal for them. Their SAR satellites, synthetic aperture radar. Okay, yeah, pretty exciting. The next mission for IQPS is very soon as March 2025. So shouldn't take very long to see one of these new birds fly. Oh, we have a new subscriber. Thank you, Sir Wendy. Buy the dip. That is a question you're going to have to answer yourself, my friend. Thanks, Adrian, as well. I'm thinking about it. And the thing is, I don't have a ton of cash right now free. Said many times, buying a house. So I could maybe buy a little bit of shares. And thank you, Kirk the Jerk, as well. May need to adjust these notifications at some point. I think they might be a little loud for you guys. Major long RN. Yeah, I mean, I've been long the shares for basically years now. What are we at? Still not really. Oh, well, we've kind of only negative 13 now, only. Man, maybe I need to mute some of these notifications if they're too loud. Let me know if they bother you guys. I don't think I'm buying today or tomorrow. After hours, just too volatile for me. You never know what will happen. Maybe we'll see what happens tomorrow. I might consider adding or selling some puts. John, I understand there's still a lot of shares that I've held, even though I have to say, 30, I wasn't feeling as bullish. And I don't think anyone who's been watching for a while should be shocked at this kind of a pullback after the run we've had, especially if you were around back in the day, right? Like if you were there in this period, we regularly had, like, obviously when we're zoomed out now, it doesn't look as bad, but we regularly had these massive run-ups and crashes. So guys like me who've been in the stock for ages and just kind of holding it as long-term as possible and trying to accumulate as many shares as possible, I don't think are super phased today. If you're newer to the stock, maybe you're a little shocked and surprised, but very volatile company. Space companies basically all are, and zooming out far enough, the chart looks pretty damn good. I say this a lot, right? But let's say we go back to June or July 2023 or wherever. Instead of having this massive run up, all the way to here and then a crash that makes you depressed. Imagine if we were just went in an absolutely straight line from where we are to back there. Like, that would still feel pretty damn good. So if you zoom out far enough and just think about the big picture, if you've been around the company as long as, you know, a lot of us have, then I think you kind of calm down and feel a little bit less stressed by the short-term moves. That being said, you know, the market's so volatile right now. Things are negative. Lots of stocks are dropping. Depending on how this earning calls goes, it wouldn't shock me if we get maybe even cheaper shares, like, sorry, a cheaper option to buy shares in the coming days and weeks. So, you know, always looking for deals to accumulate more, but I've said for a while that I basically paused buying shares. Somewhere back in here. I think my last buy was pretty low and I was accumulating as much as I can. And once we got to like, you know, 15 plus and everything was going kind of parabolic straight up, I was like, okay, I'm just going to pause, going to see how things shake out. We had some, you know, highs and we're starting to get to the point where I might unpause buying shares, if that makes sense. Because the company has undoubtedly made a lot of progress, and yeah, the stock and the company are not always the same thing. Buffering badly. Sorry to hear you guys. Let me see if I can do anything about crap. Okay. We are having sound issues apparently. Let me see if there's anything I can do. Testing. Feed cutting in and out. Sound is good on my end. Okay. Well, okay. A lot of people saying I'm good, so I guess I'll ignore those comments and hopefully the issue is resolved or it's on their end. Oh, hey, Blazer and Kieran, channel members, thank you guys for tuning in as well. Kieran, name I've seen around for a long time. Glad you're with us as well. By the way, let's see if we can do a little gift. 5 gifted subs to random chat members. So thank you guys all for being here. And we'll see who gets those. We have Liam. I wonder if that's the same Liam that was in the Discord for ages. And then Sushi Trader, John Dre, Levy. Welcome you guys to the team. Glad to have you on board for a month. And good to see you from Israel, Guy. Okay, let me know if the audio cuts out again. Always stresses you out during a live stream when you have technical issues, and trying to deal with it live is very difficult. So let's go back to what we have on Rocket Lab's website, see if their presentation is up. I would expect it to be online by now. 4th quarter financial results. Okay, thanks for confirming the audio is fine, guys. Okay, let's see what we have here. Biggest revenue year ever. 20, yeah. Okay, so we did kind of know these numbers previously if you watched my forecast video, but great growth, if lumpy, over the past several years since they've come public. 382% increase there since 2021 debut. And thank you for the subscription, Wee Van D. Welcome to the channel. Yeah, I saw the barge name, Stan. It was cool. I liked it. Okay, so what time is it? Because I don't want to miss the actual call starting. No, we still got a while to go on that one. Okay, let's see. 16 launches, 455 million plus in contracts. Yeah, I think a lot of this stuff we kind of knew. Building an end-to-end space first Neutron launch planned in 2025. So it seems like they're not pushing that back right now. 20 plus Electron and HASTE missions scheduled. So that's pretty vague, and I'm not kind of not too surprised by that because I think they've been burned before by giving guidance on Electron and having their customers not be ready. And then it looks bad on them because it looks like they're missing what they guided for. It's not really their fault. And they do like providing that flexibility to the customers, but if the customer's not ready, then they're not ready, obviously. So being vague and just saying 20 plus, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of sandbagging in there, maybe not sandbagging, but they're giving themselves a lot of leeway. Maybe internally they think they could hit like 28, but they want to say 20 in case they have more of these customer delay issues. So I really do hope they hit at least 20 because it's kind of 24 is the mark I've been looking for years now, and they've started to get close to it, but I do want to see the growth continue. So 16 to 20 wouldn't even be that massive growth. So for me, if they don't hit 20, that will be a disappointment. Whereas in the past, usually I expect them to miss those launch projections. Let me know how many launches you guys think they will have this year. Introducing new low-cost volume Rocket Lab. Yeah, so interesting how they put their new satellite model in the applications category. So I think they are saying that, yes, this will be the platform, the satellite bus that is going to host their application, whatever it is, and not Lightning. So that is interesting. Thanks for subscribing, Yo-Yo. I do appreciate it. Okay. See Electron. I always think this image is amazing. Okay, we apparently popped back up to about 18, so things are doing a little bit better in the after hours. See, that's why selling or buying in the after hours is just so scary. Everything is just so volatile, especially on earnings like this. So that's why I don't usually trade in the after hours very much. Obviously, Electron, very reliable, no shock there. Broadcast is already live. I thought it was 5 p.m. Okay, let's see if we can check it out. Thanks for letting me know. Don't play. Okay, so the broadcast is live, but there's nothing yet. It's just kind of the intro music. So I'm going to leave that for now and keep an eye on it and continue just going through this PowerPoint with you guys and talking about what I'm seeing here. We're going to jump over to that presentation as soon as we get it going. So preferred launch for constellations. So nice they're getting some of those constellation launches now for Electron as opposed to just one-offs. And Haste, probably what I'm most bullish about when it comes to Electron and the growth in that hypersonics suborbital testbed market. I think there's a lot going on right there. I hope we hear more about it in the call, especially this Kratos contract and like how many launches they think this might actually entail. 5 more Haste missions on the manifest for the Department of Defense. That's exciting as well. And the cool looking barge, love to see it. The year of Neutron, clearly not backing down on Neutron launching this year, which is great because that report, a lot of it was just saying a lot of skepticism about Neutron being able to launch in 2025 or maybe even in 2026, they were saying. So I really, personally, I'm not looking for a mid-year launch anymore. I'm thinking maybe a Q4 launch. I said even at the start of the year, I was thinking Neutron might launch in October or November, and that's kind of the timeline I'm still thinking. That's just my opinion. I don't really have any like super secret info there. And let me... I have been here, Wes. Oh, good. We have not an exit here. I was worried, but everything will be okay now. Yeah, I came live a little bit early, Wes. Francisco added. When was the last time you added, Francisco? Curious to hear how long it's been. And integration. Looking forward to seeing that. Structures being produced in parallel for the second launch vehicle. So they're already working on structures for the second launch vehicle while working on structures for the first launch vehicle. Thought we might see a little more on structures, to be honest, than just this. Report. They shorts. That's interesting, Mark, and good to see you as well. I did see that there was a legal firm looking at, I think they were just currently investigating right now, so they hadn't actually filed anything, but I guess they could potentially try to file something. And yeah, Wes, there was a recent short seller report if you didn't see it. Thank you, Andrea, as well, for the subscription. It is appreciated. Engine testing, which is... I still want to see more from Archimedes. Hopefully everything is continuing well at Stennis with the qualification testing. We did hear previously mass reductions of more than 200 kilogram per engine, which is nice, and I'm sure will help with the performance of the rocket. Second test cell complete. So they have, I think, these two separate cells where they can be testing two separate engines, which would obviously help speed that up. That barge looks massive. Wow. Is that... Man, maybe it's just the angle, but for some reason, to me, it looks way bigger than what I've seen, like Just Read the Instructions, or Of Course I Still Love You, or like the SpaceX barges. But maybe we're just zoomed in a bit further. Like, okay, this one doesn't look as big. But yeah, definitely a bit of a beast there. First Neutron launch, plans to test landing system on water with no recovery. Is expected to enter service, as we heard, in 2026. It is a large barge. It's a fat bottom girl. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Okay. Road to launch. Where are we now? Underway concurrently. We have stage 1 flight hardware, stage 2, Hungry Hippo, qualification, engine qualification. A lot of this we already saw previously on their website, so I don't think a ton new here in terms of where they are on the road to launch, because a lot of this was on their website already in a different form. Yeah, they changed their mind on that, Dean, a while ago. I think there was a lot of customer input about wanting the additional performance from being able to land downrange on a barge versus landing back at Wallops. So they do still plan to be able to land at Wallops, but that will be a little bit later that they get the approvals and the pad ready for return to launch site. Obviously, the performance is much less than if they go downrange. I think it's something like 13 tons versus 8 tons, I believe. So 8 tons return to launch site, 13 downrange on the barge. And I guess some customers wanted that extra performance. So they will have both as an option. And I assume the downrange version will be significantly more expensive than the return to launch site, given that they have to do all that extra work and use the barge. Check back in on conference call. Yeah, it's not supposed to start for another 10-ish minutes, so I think we still just have the intro music going there. Live missions underway. Not a ton of new space systems contracts, unfortunately. I was hoping we might see something along those lines. Where's the stock anyway? Okay, so now we're sitting down 7.75-ish%. The Varda mission is pretty cool right now. I think they just did the release for the re-entry of Varda's capsule. The lunar lander mission we know about, that's obviously Fireflies. I made a video about that recently. If you're interested, they're going to attempt their landing fairly short order. Rocket Lab solar panels as well as software. I didn't know about the landing phase support. That's interesting. I wonder what they do with the landing. Maybe it's just their software. Advancing, SDA, which we're already knew about, prime contractor on that using Lightning, and they did announce recently they completed their preliminary design review, so theoretically I would think, would realize some of the revenue for the program at that point as they move through the contract. and Victus Haze. I think they're ready. From what I understood, I think they're waiting on the other, which is Firefly. I think they're going to have 2 responsive launches and see if they can kind of get close together or something like that, if I recall correctly. But yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, the great gig in the sky. Exactly. Yeah. The barge will make the rocket world go around. Okay. So we have the family with a new, this is the family we know and love if you guys aren't familiar. And cheers, Boom Shanka. Photon, the OG. Pioneer, this is mostly used these days for Varda. Explorer, when they're going to the moon for Capstone, or Venus, I believe they're basing it on this bus, and this Lightning spacecraft for SDA, as well as their Global Star constellation. And thank you for the sub as well, Hydra. So Flatellite, we read about before, should be able to pack a ton of these suckers into a rocket fairing. You can see a demo here, how they stack very well, not unlike Starlink either. Still loving the song, I see. More than just a new product to serve our customers' ever-evolving needs, a bold strategic move toward being a truly end-to-end space company operating our own constellation. So interesting thing on this is they haven't talked about the payload on Flatellite. So we still haven't seen an acquisition. I kind of thought I might see something on the payload front. And we also heard a lot of talk lately about partnerships, right? And how they might partner with existing companies to kind of get their way into an industry. Doesn't seem like they'd be partnering with someone who already has a satellite design if they're going to be using this design for their own constellation. And yeah, that probably is like a model of Neutron's fairing. Looks a lot like Starlink. Yeah. A little bit different. Obviously, you got the 2 solar arrays, not just the one, but interesting stuff. Financials. Okay, we should check. Yeah, we still got a few minutes. So we're going to re-go over a lot of this stuff on the actual call, but let's take a look. We have the intro music going, which is bad because it will demonetize our... Okay. I think, guys, we should hop over to the update as we are about to start in a couple minutes. Give me a second here. So, of course... I wonder if I can just quickly edit this in real time, because it looks like it's cutting off a little bit now. We will have the call playing here. Right now, it's just intro music. Oh, and we lost it. Uh-oh. Bear with me, guys. Highly professional technical stream here. Yeah. Okay. So we're kind of cutting off the bottom of the call presentation. I think that's a little bit better. And on the right as well. I swear the thing changes size every single time I do this, and then I've got to last second make adjustments. So yeah, that should be good enough. Do it well. I mean, it all comes down to the revenue numbers and earnings at the end of the day, right? Like Rocket Lab is a very cool company. They're growing rapidly. They've got very exciting rocket and stuff like that. But a lot of the stuff they're planned is not giving revenue today. So I'd have to check out Duolingo's earnings numbers. And then, yeah, let me edit this as well. I swear everything breaks always right before I go live. Bottom to 40. Okay. So this is our after hours stock, and I think we're good to go now. And of course, we have our guidance already up. So if you guys, I don't know who asshole he is. In terms of guidance, yeah, 125 to 135, and they hit 132.4. So very near the top end of the guidance. I didn't see the margin numbers. Did anyone actually see that anywhere? I don't think it was listed. Maybe they'll say it on the call. Still have just the intro music playing. Oh, okay. Yeah, I try to hang out with the Reddit Rocket Lab subreddit sometimes, but it's tough when you try to do this content creation stuff because, I have a Discord and I try to be active there too and talk there as well as on Twitter. So because you kind of have to market yourself or whatever. So there's so many different places and it's tough, but yeah, not too familiar with him. Hey, Man of Sand, good seeing you again, as well as Danny, looking to buy more at a bargain price. Yeah, it wouldn't, as I said, I haven't bought any since we were in the single digits, and if things continue to drop, then maybe it's something I'll... Okay, I didn't get to the last page. So GAAP gross margins... Oh, is that guidance? I was looking for what we had in Q4. Okay, looks like we're getting ready to go here.
Call to discuss Rocket Lab's full year and fourth quarter 2024 financial results. Now, before we begin the call, I'd like to remind you that our remarks may contain forward-looking statements that relate to the future performance of the company, and these statements are intended to qualify for the safe harbor protection from liability established by the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act. Any such statements are not guarantees of future performance, and factors that could influence our results are highlighted in today's press release, and others are contained in our filings with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Such statements are based upon information available to the company as of the date hereof and are subject to change for future developments. Except as required by law, the company does not undertake any obligation to update these statements. Now, our remarks and press release today also contain non-GAAP financial measures within the meaning of Regulation G enacted by the SEC. Included in such release and our supplemental materials are reconciliations of these historical non-GAAP financial measures to the comparable financial measures calculated in accordance with GAAP. This call is also being webcast with a supporting presentation, and a replay and copy of the presentation will be available on our website. Our speakers today
I think I have like
Rocket Lab founder and
14,500
Chief Executive
or maybe a
Officer,
bit
Sir
more.
Peter Beck,
Yeah, I think it's a
as well
bit more
as
now.
Chief Financial Officer Adam Spice. They'll be discussing key business developments and highlights, including updates on our launch and space systems programs. We will discuss financial highlights and outlook before we finish by taking questions. So with that, let me turn the call over to Sir Peter.
Thanks, Marielle, and thanks for everybody joining us today. Look, 2024 was our biggest revenue year ever, and I'm proud to share that we delivered very strong results for Q4 2024, and indeed for the full year. We achieved our highest annual revenue figure to date of $436 million. That's more than a 78% increase on previous year's revenue, demonstrating that our strategy of delivering end-to-end space services is paying off and delivering significant growth. From Q3 to Q4 last year, we saw growth of more than 26%, and year-on-year Q4 growth was 121%. Something you'll hear me say often at Rocket Lab is we do what we say we're going to do, and in this case, that's delivering significant growth, 382% increase in Q4 revenue to be precise, since our entry into the NASDAQ in 2021. On the launch side, these figures are driven by an increase of Electron launch cadence and the introduction of hypersonic suborbital test launch capabilities. Space Systems contribution has been continued strong execution across both spacecraft and constellation build and operation, as well as our merchant satellite component businesses. Now, let's dig into these areas in a little bit more detail in the following slides. Our accomplishments in 2024 really speak for those record numbers. On the launch front, we delivered a record number of 16 launches spanning Electron and HASTE, all with 100% mission success. Once again, we've maintained our position as the leading small launch provider globally and the second most frequently launched US rocket annually. We signed more than $450 million in new contracts in 2024 across launch and space systems, further strengthening our backlog, which currently sits at just over $1 billion. We also achieved a world first by successfully launching 2 missions within 24 hours from pads on either side of the planet. On the space systems front, there are too many achievements to distill into one slide, so here are just a couple of my favourites. We made significant progress on the design and build of the 40-plus spacecraft in our backlog, but I'm particularly proud of the team completing the manufacture and test of the twin spacecraft for NASA's ESCAPADE mission to Mars. They did this on an impressively short time frame and an incredibly cost competitive for an interplanetary mission. While they're yet to launch, we're excited to see these birds on their way to the Red Planet soon. Our re-entry for Varda was another major milestone, successfully enabling the first in-space manufacturing mission outside the International Space Station. Since the first re-entry early last year, we've delivered 2 more Pioneer spacecraft for Varda, with the second returning to Earth in South Australia. Another third Pioneer spacecraft for Varda is just now days away from launch. That's just a tiny snapshot of our achievements in 2024, but before we dig deeper into the updates across Electron, Neutron, and Space Systems, I want to provide an overview of our strategic focus for this year. We're building a truly end-to-end space company. That means owning the full value chain of having the keys to unlock enormous potential from the rapidly growing space economy. The first 2 steps are well underway with launch and space systems, meaning that we have our own ride to space and we can build and operate the satellites on orbit. The final remaining step is space applications, or delivering data or services from space using our own constellation. In 2024, we made significant progress across all 3, and we're building on that again in 2025. On the launch front, this year is the year of Neutron. We look forward to unlocking the medium launch bottleneck by bringing Neutron to the pad to help launch and more than estimated 10,000 constellation spacecraft that need deployment in the coming decade. We're continuing to wrap up our small launch cadence with more than 20 missions in 2025 on the manifest across Electron and HASTE. Of course, as usual, these missions only launch when our customers are ready. It's worth pointing out that, as far as I'm aware, Rocket Lab is the only launch provider with missions scheduled this year across small launch, medium launch, hypersonic suborbital test launch. This demonstrates the breadth of our launch experience and capabilities and also positions us to take advantage of the TAM exposure across several different growing launch markets. On the space systems front, we have more than 40 spacecraft in various stages of production right now. By the end of this summer, by the end of summer this year, we expect to have more than quadruple the number of Rocket Lab spacecraft on orbit, ready to launch, or have completed their missions. I'm also excited to reveal a new addition to our spacecraft lineup, one that slots nicely into our vision for space applications, and I'll talk more about this satellite later in the call. But first, so now for some updates on Electron. 2024 was a fantastic year for Electron. Last year, we increased our launch cadence 60% year on year, and 2025 is shaping up to be even bigger. We've launched twice this year already, both times for satellite constellation operators, and each with only 10 days of each other, within 10 days of each other. Last year's trend was building out satellite constellations with Electron. In Q1 2025, this has continued with launches for constellation operators Black Sky and Kinéis, both of whom have booked multiple missions on Electron to deploy or replenish their constellations. Kinéis in particular is worth calling out since we launched them for the first time in June last year as part of a 5-launch deal. We're now 4 launches in and on track to complete their 5th launch shortly, meaning that we will have deployed their full constellation of 25 satellites in less than a year. Now, to put that into perspective, many constellation operators can wait for a year for their first launch with other providers. Last year, we also signed a multi-launch deal with the Japanese Earth imaging company IQPS for 4 Electrons, And then just this month, they signed another agreement to double that and lock in 8 Electron launches for their constellation deployment over 2025 and 2026. In 2024, we built on our success in the small launch market with Electron's suborbital variant HASTE. Last year's Pentagon budget request for hypersonic research was up 46% to $6.9 billion on the 2 years prior, and we're ideally positioned to support this expanding market. We're the only commercial provider that's executed 2 launches in 21 days for the Department of Defense MARC-TB program, which we completed in Q4, and we have another 5 HASTE missions locked in for the DoD and its contractors. In January, we also announced that we've been selected by Kratos to support the next phase of the MARC-TB program called MARC-TB 2.0. It's a $1.45 billion 5-year contract to expand hypersonic technology testing, and with HASTE, we're uniquely suited to meet that challenge. I think it's also important to place all of that within the wider context of today's geopolitics and America's defense technology. Hypersonics have become increasingly urgent under the new administration. In the words of the President, within the executive order he issued in January to build the Iron Dome for America, the threat of hypersonic and other advanced aerial attacks is the most serious threat facing the United States today. Furthering peace through strength is critical to America's defense. Our capabilities with HASTE, our affordability and our speed, all of which are the new administration's top priorities, makes it a great product fit to address these challenges. Right, moving on from small launch into Neutron updates. Well, the title really here says it all. This is the year of Neutron, our monopoly breaker to unlock the bottleneck of medium launch. As I said before, there's more than 10,000 satellites that need launch in the next 5 years from commercial constellations alone. And then there's the growing demand from national security and defense missions, as well as interplanetary exploration for the science community, and it goes on. The need is clear, so I won't labour on it, other than to say that the industry is crying out for more launch options in this class, and Neutron is coming to market in record time to deliver it. Neutron is also critical to us launching and operating our own future satellite constellation. So over the next few slides, I'll take you through the latest development milestones and achievements as we work to get Neutron on the pad in the second half of this year. Okay, so at LC3, all major hardware and infrastructure items have arrived and been installed, and our civil works on the site are practically finished. Yes, and we even have water. Most recent updates include the flare stack, a 165-ton steel circular launch mount structure that Neutron will launch from, a giant pair of LNG tanks, the ones you can see on the bottom left of the slides. Those are the heaviest objects to have ever crossed the Wallops Island Bridge, and their installation marks the completion of all the long lead propellant storage for the launch site. What's left now is to complete the electrical and mechanical connections for a fully integrated system, but otherwise we look forward to its grand opening in a few short months. Now on to the one of the most exciting and novel features of Neutron, its Hungry Hippo fairing. The massive reusable nose cone halves are now live and moving, fully integrated with their avionics and actuators and all of the mechanical systems. We're testing like we're flying, opening and closing the Hungry Hippo at full speed to understand exactly how they behave. And it's glad to say I was there in person for the first lot of testing, and I can tell you that it's a wonderful sound to hear the Hungry Hippo in action. And I fully encourage you to go and check out the video we'll put out today of all of that testing in action. It's pretty cool. We have a few more run-throughs as we add some hardware. Then they'll soon be making their way over to our assembly and integration facilities, ready to be fitted to Neutron's first stage for launch. Let me draw your attention to the picture on the top left. That's our stage 1 tank, stacked and ready to ship out. Check out the person at the bottom of the frame for scale, and you can see the size of that tank. All of the launch vehicle is currently in production, with significant parts of it currently in test before being shipped out to the launch site for integration. We're even moving past Flight 1, excuse me, with structures, including fairing halves, already in production for our second Neutron rocket. For Flight 1, though, all of Neutron's largest pieces will soon be moving across the country and making their way to the East Coast. They'll be integrated with all the avionics and software, and it'll go the fit checks and AIT before going straight into full system qualification. So keep an eye out for pictures of tanks on barges to know where we're getting close to that next milestone. Now on to Archimedes. The engine's qualification campaign continues at a cracking pace. We're hot firing every few days, and the testing is going well. We've got engines consistently moving across the country between the production line in Long Beach and the engine test site in Mississippi. You also may have seen we shared a recent update that performance iterations on the production line have resulted more than a couple of 100 kg shed from the engine, which is always good. And also check out the size of that second stage nozzle expansion cone in the bottom left of the slide that were recently produced and on its way for testing. It's a cool thing. Okay, so from engine testing, we're really doubling down on our test cadence to match with the increased production rate out of Long Beach. So we've been running a really intensifying test campaign on multiple engines as we lead up to Flight 1. So in that case, the build of a second Archimedes engine test cell is nearly complete, and this enables us to concurrently test engines as our investments in production ramp up. So having two cells is always good. Now, we've provided plenty of updates on where Neutron will lift off, but not much where it will land. Here she is, meet return on investment. We named that specifically for Adam Spice. Neutron's 400-foot ocean landing platform, that's what we see on the screen there. With the image at the bottom of the left, also providing a great sense of scale how big this vessel actually is. Alongside shore-based landing sites, and the ocean platform gives us the flexibility to maximize the vehicle's performance by allowing us to dedicate less propellant to landing and more to lifting our customers' payloads to diverse and complex orbits. With the vessel secured, work has now begun on modifying it. We're adding autonomous ground support equipment that secures Neutron to the deck when it lands, heat shielding, propulsive systems, and things to keep it on target for Neutron's return. The landing platform is also a clear indication that we're scaling up and moving past, first minimum viable product with Neutron now. With one launch set for 25, we're aiming to triple that in 26, and then the landing barge is obviously critical to that ramp up. Now, recovery isn't planned on the barge for the first test flight. We'll be doing a soft splashdown, but we can expect return on investment to live up to its name in 26 when it enters service for all the future Neutron flights. Now, the road to launch. I'm often asked, what should we look at to indicate Neutron's progress to the pad, because there's just so much going on. So we tried to create a little bit of a visual overview here of the big ticket items that we're running concurrently right now and what's left to go to get to the pad. We've always been clear that we run aggressive schedules, and that gets us to the pad on a rapid time frame. But of course, nobody wants to get the rocket faster to the pad than I do. The important thing to point out here is that these tasks are not serial. We don't wait to finish one before starting the next. Everything has been worked on concurrently, and some of them are long lead pieces that might come together just days before the launch. For example, a launch license. This isn't our first rodeo, as everyone knows. We're no strangers to bringing in a new rocket to market. We're running aggressive schedules, as we always do. At the end of the day, as I've always said, it's...
My audio's cut out here. Does anyone else have audio?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the operator. I apologize, but there will be a slight delay in today's conference.
Uh-oh. Looks like Peter's audio cut out. I think they're working on getting
Once
it
again,
back.
ladies and gentlemen, this is the operator. There will be a slight delay in today's conference. Please hold and the call will resume momentarily. Thank you for your patience.
So one thing he did say right before he cut out is it's an aggressive schedule, which makes me think, it's kind of the wordage, the verbiage that we kind of heard before the last delay. So I think they're kind of trying to prepare you that it might not launch mid-year, which is one of the reasons why I thought like maybe end of the year is more fair, like October, November. But yeah, that's just me. I know a lot of people do still believe in the summer launch. Oh no, not the music. The music that demonetizes the whole thing. Anyway, whatever. What do you guys think so far? Let me know down in the comments. I'm pretty okay with it. Nothing too shocking. This nozzle extension is pretty cool. So what I was wondering about, if you saw in one of the earlier slides, is basically a piece of the nozzle that would go on the end of an Archimedes and like have an extra long engine. And that would be, I believe, for the vacuum optimized version that gets used on the second stage in space. And that's one of the things I've been wondering that we haven't seen yet, is a vacuum optimized version of Archimedes. But maybe it's just a regular Archimedes and they just stick this extension on the end of it, which would be pretty cool, I think. Like, you don't need two separate models of the engine. It's just the exact same engine. And you stick this extra like engine bell. Oh, no, we're not back yet. So I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, sitting around $18 still. I mean, I think we were kind of primed for a drop going into it, the way the market's been going and the stock's been going. I don't know what would have caused it to go up, short of like Neutron miraculously sitting on the pad already. I did not fart, Mike. I didn't hear anything. You guys actually heard something? I don't know. Maybe I moved my chair? I don't know. Asking the important questions here. Thank you for that. He's back?
To get us to the pad and flight this year. We've always been really clear that we run aggressive schedules, and that gets us to the pad quickly. And of course, I want to get to the pad faster than anybody else. The important thing to point out here is all these tasks are not serial. We don't wait to finish one before starting the next. Everything has been worked concurrently, and some of them are long lead pieces that come together literally days before the launch. For example, a launch license. And now, of course, this isn't our first rodeo, and we're no strangers to bringing a new rocket to the pad. We run aggressive schedules, and at the end of the day, as I always say, it's a rocket program. But right now, we're planning for first launch in the second half of this year. I'm very happy with the progress and of the development program. Neutron is going to be a really important vehicle for the industry, and we're excited to see to be the ones delivering that. So moving on from launch now, and to provide some updates on our space systems businesses. I'm happy to share mission success for our latest spacecraft Varda. In the early hours of this morning, and I mean early, our Pioneer spacecraft flawlessly executed an Earth re-entry maneuver and deployed Varda's capsule to land in South Australia. The mission was launched in January and had been operating on orbit for over a month, delivering critical mission functions for Varda's capsule. We have our third Pioneer-class satellite with its Varda capsule ready and waiting for launch in the coming days, which is the second satellite ready for launch of this program within a month. For our space systems team, they're busy right now helping land a NASA lunar lander mission on the moon. After its 45-day journey through space, our very own space-grade solar cells have provided over 1,400 operational hours of power for this mission, while the space software team have been providing 24/7 support for the orbit control and engine burns that have gotten this far. They'll be continuing that support for the mission right through its most critical phases too, including landing on the moon itself. On the national defence side, our team is really hitting their stride with two critical programs. We're now deep into the detailed design phase of our $500 million prime contract with the Space Development Agency. Early last month, we cleared a critical step of the program, the first design review that ensures our satellites and how they operate all meet the rigorous mission requirements set down by the US Department of Defense. All 18 satellites use practically every one of our integrated subsystems and components, including solar panels, composite structures, star trackers, reaction wheels, radios, flight, ground software, avionics, launch dispensers, and so on and so forth. It's a high-level control over our own products within our own prime programs that gives us the ability to deliver world-class national defence solutions with certainty on cost and schedule and, of course, quality. We also have our 24-hour notice responsive space mission coming up this year for the US Space Force. This one is our $32 million Victus Haze mission with a Rocket Lab satellite launching on a Rocket Lab Electron on short notice to demonstrate that we can respond to threats on very short timelines. In the defence industry, that's called tactically responsive space. It's a hugely complex yet sought-after capability that the Pentagon is eager to have on hand with trusted commercial partners. With their proven capabilities across space systems and launch, it's a position we're uniquely suited for. Now, most of those missions employ spacecraft from our lineup of standard vertically integrated satellites that we announced last year. But today I'm excited to share a big announcement. Please meet Flatellite, a low-cost, mass-producible satellite tailored for large constellations. Now, we've developed Flatellite after many years of working closely with constellation operators and getting to deeply understand their needs of today and, of course, into the future. Flatellite is a scalable, resilient, high-power satellite that can enable capabilities such as secure low-latency, high-speed connectivity and remote sensing for national security, defense, and commercial markets. With Flatellite, we can do something few spacecraft manufacturers can. We can build it fast, cost-effectively, and in high volumes thanks to our experience in spacecraft production combined with deep vertical integration of our in-house components. This puts us in greater control of cost and schedule than others relying on constrained supply chains. What's more, once we've built them, we can launch them ourselves too. That's thanks to its low-profile stackable design, we can maximize the number of Flatellites launched per mission, ensuring seamless integration with Neutron. The bottom far right render with Flatellite stacked inside Neutron's fairings gives you a bit of an idea of the sense of scale here. Now, the Flatellite is more than just a new product development to serve our customers' ever-evolving needs, though. It's a bold, strategic move towards completing the final step of Rocket Lab's ultimate vision of truly becoming an end-to-end space company and operating its own constellation and delivering services from space. By having our own ride to space with Neutron and Electron and being able to build our own spacecraft in high volumes, we're at a distinct advantage when it comes to establishing constellations with speed and cost efficiency. It's about all we can share on Flatellite today, but I'm excited to be able to share more with you soon on this, so watch this space. So with that, I'll hand it over to Adam now to provide further commentary and to discuss our financial highlights and outlook.
Thanks, Pete. Fourth quarter 2024 revenue was $132 million, which was above the midpoint of our prior guidance range and reflects significant year-over-year growth of 121%, driven by strong contribution from both business segments, but led by Space Systems. Fourth quarter revenue represented a sequential increase of 26.3%, primarily due to the increase in launches from 3 to 5, including 2 HASTE missions during the quarter, which come at a higher ASP versus standard Electron missions. On a full-year basis, 2024 revenue was $436 million, an impressive growth of approximately 78% year-on-year. Our Launch Services segment delivered revenue of $42.4 million, and our current Electron and HASTE backlog continues to support an increasing ASP with some quarterly variability tied to volume purchase commitments, launch location, and mission assurance requirements. On a full-year basis, Launch delivered revenue of $125.4 million, which is an increase of roughly 74% year-on-year. Our Space Systems segment delivered $90 million in the quarter, reflecting sequential growth of over 7%, driven primarily by a strong quarter from satellite manufacturing and our Attitude, Direction, and Control subsystems business. On a full-year basis, Space Systems delivered revenue of $310.8 million, or an increase of 80% year-on-year. Now, turning to gross margin. GAAP gross margin for the fourth quarter was 27.8%, at the high end of our prior guidance range of 26% to 28%. Non-GAAP gross margin for the fourth quarter was 34%, which was also at the high end of our prior guidance range of 32% to 34%. On a full-year basis, GAAP gross margin was 26.6%, while non-GAAP gross margin was 32%. Although gross margins in our launch business can be volatile quarter to quarter, dependent upon customer mix and mission type, in 2025, we expect continued margin expansion in both segments as Electron's cadence continues to increase at higher ASPs and our Space Systems business continues to scale. Relatedly, we ended Q4 with production-related headcount of 1,004 heads, up 40 from the prior quarter. Turning to backlog, we ended Q4 2024 with $1.07 billion of total backlog, with launch backlog of $386 million and Space Systems backlog of $681 million. While year-on-year backlog growth was modest at approximately 2%, this should be put in the context of increasing lumpiness of backlog additions, given the timing of increasingly larger needle-moving deals and customer program opportunities. Sequentially, there was a slight remixing of our backlog as a result of particularly strong bookings in our launch segment, which we expect to continue as we convert our pipeline of Neutron opportunities. At first glance, our backlog has roughly a 50-50 split between government and commercial. But as you dig deeper, many of our commercial customers ultimately cater to the needs of U.S. government and other friendly nations. We view this as a significant advantage, especially in evolving political and budgetary environments, as government's focus on space and efficiency remains a high priority. We continue to cultivate a healthy pipeline, including multi-launch deals and large satellite manufacturing contracts that, as mentioned earlier, can create lumpiness in backlog growth given the size and complexity of these opportunities. We expect approximately 50% of current backlog to be recognized as revenues within 12 months. Turning to operating expenses in the quarter. GAAP operating expenses for the fourth quarter of 2024 were $88.4 million, modestly above our guidance range of $84 to $86 million. Non-GAAP operating expenses for the fourth quarter were $74.5 million, just below our guidance range of $75 to $77 million. GAAP operating expenses grew 39% from the prior year fourth quarter, almost entirely related to a step-up in Neutron spending, particularly Archimedes testing, investments in composite structures development, and IT-related spending, including a step-up in cybersecurity requirements related to our U.S. government programs. Non-GAAP operating expenses also grew 39% year-on-year, largely due to the same reasons as our GAAP OpEx increases, less the effect of stock-based compensation expenses and non-recurring transaction costs. Now focusing on quarter-over-quarter changes. The sequential increases in both GAAP and non-GAAP operating expenses were primarily driven by continued growth in headcount and prototype spending to support our Neutron development program, and related IT infrastructure and IT support for both Neutron and our SDA satellite contract. In R&D specifically, GAAP expenses increased $532,000 quarter-on-quarter due to Neutron prototyping materials and headcount growth. Non-GAAP R&D expenses were up $3.3 million quarter-on-quarter, more than the GAAP increase, due to the fluctuations in non-cash stock-based compensation between R&D and cost of sales related to the EAC accounting of our space systems manufacturing programs. As such, the non-GAAP R&D increase of $3.3 million represents well the underlying trend in core R&D spend in the business, again, driven largely by investments in Neutron. Q4 ending R&D headcount was 828, representing an increase of 52 from the prior quarter. In SG&A, GAAP expenses increased $7.9 million quarter-on-quarter, largely due to an increase in outside services related to IT, legal, and finance, with IT spend largely related to security and cybersecurity requirements under our SDA contract, legal spend supporting a range of corporate initiatives, including corporate development, and year-end audit activities, which are paired with an increase in staff costs. With that GAAP spend, we reported non-recurring transaction costs of $2.2 million in Q4, owing to a step-up in corporate development activities, including advancing a robust pipeline of M&A opportunities. Non-GAAP SG&A expenses increased by $2.5 million, driven by the previously mentioned GAAP increases. Q4 ending SG&A headcount was 329, representing an increase of 29 from the prior quarter. In summary, total fourth quarter headcount was 2,161, up 121 heads from the prior quarter. Turning to cash. Purchases of property, equipment, and capitalized software licenses were $21.5 million in the fourth quarter of 2024, an increase of $10.5 million from the $11 million in the third quarter of 2024. As we continue to invest in Neutron research, testing, and scaling production, we expect increased capital expenditures to continue for the next few quarters. Cash consumed from operations was $2.4 million in the fourth quarter of 2024, compared to $30.9 million in the third quarter of 2024. The sequential improvement of $28.5 million was driven primarily by the increased Space Systems program's milestone receipts, which can be lumpy. Overall, non-GAAP free cash flow, defined as GAAP operating cash flow less purchases of property, equipment, and capitalized software in the fourth quarter of 2024, was a use of $23.9 million, compared to $41.9 million in the third quarter of 2024. We do expect a pickup in cash consumption in Q1 owing to an expected increase in Neutron spending ahead of our 2025 launch and the lumpiness in large contract-driven space systems milestone collections, which are projected to be lower in Q1 off a strong Q4, combined with higher payment outflows to our SDA program subcons that we expect will ultimately be reflected in higher revenue recognition in the back half of 2025. The ending balance of cash, cash equivalents, restricted cash, and marketable securities was $484 million as of the end of the fourth quarter of 2024. We exited Q4 in a strong position to execute on our organic expansion initiatives, as well as inorganic options to further vertically integrate our supply chain with the critical capabilities and expand our addressable market, consistent with what we have done successfully in the past. Adjusted EBITDA loss was $23.2 million in the fourth quarter of 2024, modestly above our guidance range of a $27 to $29 million loss. The sequential improvement of $7.7 million was primarily driven by revenue growth and gross margin improvement across both segments. And with that, let's turn to our guidance for the first quarter of 2025. We expect revenue in the first quarter to range between $117 and $123 million, representing approximately 29% year-on-year revenue growth at the midpoint, and expect a return to sequential growth in Q2, driven by strength in our space systems business. We expect first quarter GAAP gross margin to range between 25% to 27%, and non-GAAP gross margin to range between 30% to 32%. These forecasted GAAP and non-GAAP gross margins reflect less favorable mix within our space systems segment and a lower launch ASP driven by customer mix discussed earlier. We expect first quarter GAAP operating expenses to range between $93 million and $95 million, and non-GAAP operating expenses to range between $77 and $79 million. The quarter-on-quarter increases are driven primarily by continued Neutron investment into staff costs, prototyping, and materials. We expect first quarter GAAP and non-GAAP net interest expense to be $2.7 million. We expect first quarter adjusted EBITDA loss to range between $33 million and $35 million, and basic weighted average common shares outstanding to be approximately 458 million shares, which excludes convertible preferred shares of approximately 51 million. Lastly, given where we are in the final push to not only get Neutron to the pad this year, but also make advanced production scaling CapEx investments, such as the recovery barge that Pete spoke about earlier, as well as investing in inventory for subsequent Neutron tails beyond the test launch tail this year, cash consumption will increase and diverge more than it has normally from adjusted EBITDA. We continue to see the program investment in getting to Neutron minimum viable product and infrastructure to be consistent with our initial estimates of approximately $250 million to $300 million, having spent approximately $200 million of gross GAAP OpEx and CapEx through the end of 2024 on this program. Specifically, over the last 4 quarters, total cash consumption has been running between approximately $20 million and $40 million per quarter, and we expect this number to increase in Q1 due to a combination of these Neutron-related investments, as well as long lead procurement items for our SDA program, and a lack of significant contractual milestone payments receivable across our MDA Globalstar and SDA programs in the quarter. While we proactively manage the working capital elements of our business, this unique situation is likely to result in an increase in cash consumption to approximately double from this prior range of $20 million to $40 million in Q1. We expect this dynamic to moderate in coming quarters with the resumption of contractual milestone payment schedules under our large space systems programs, and as we get the minimum viable infrastructure in place to support the inaugural launch of Neutron later this year. And with that, we'll hand the call over to the operator for questions.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. At this time, I would like to remind everyone to ask a question. Press the star button followed by the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, please press the pound key or star 2. One moment, please, for your first question. Your first question comes from the line of Edison Yu of Deutsche Bank. Please go ahead.
Thanks for taking our questions. The first one on Neutron, and to check the language around the timing. I think in the past it's been talked about as mid-2025. Now you're saying second half. Is this just kind of, semantics, it's a couple months, or are you trying to maybe put some cushion or take more time with any of the processes?
Yeah, hey, Edison. We've sort of said in the past mid 2025. So yeah, we're taking giving ourselves a little bit more time to get it to the pad and get the launch. But I mean, we're talking months here. It's not it's not very material.
Understood. And just in terms of the launch itself, what would you kind of define as success? And I frame it in the context of, let's say it gets to orbit. Does that mean we're pretty confident in the 3 for next year? Just curious on the parameters for what you would define as a mission success.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Our intention is to go to orbit. We're not anything less than that is not where we want to be. So no, our intention is orbital on the first flight, which I think some people in the space industry who know it well realizes that's difficult to do. But like I say, this is our second time round, so that's what we define as success for that mission.
Great, thank you.
Your next question comes from the line of Andres Shepherd of Cantor Fitzgerald. Please go ahead.
Hey, everyone. Congratulations on the quarter, and thanks for the very thorough updates. Congrats on all the progress as well. Peter, just maybe to follow up on the Neutron question, maybe another way to ask is, how confident are you in launching this year? And as we look into 2026, how should we think about the revenue mix starting to shift between space systems and launch systems? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll ask the first part of the question, Andre, and then pass it off to Adam for the second half. But I mean, look, we're not tracking any major events that would cause us to be concerned about trying to get this away this year. I always caveat anything with it's a rocket program. I mean, we have some major tests to complete, but at this stage, we're tracking pretty confidently to try and get this launch away.
Yeah, and I can take the second piece of that, Andre. So, yeah, the mix in this business, I think, will be, it's not going to be too unpredictable. So if we continue to see growth in our Electron business, now that will become over time a smaller part. Of course, it's all of our launch revenue today. It'll become a piece of the launch business once Neutron starts to fly in its revenue generating form. So look, if you extend our launch business that we as Pete mentioned earlier, north of 20 launches this year, as with the manifests, it would indicate continued growth off of that into 26. So you've got some natural growth there, but then you start to introduce, if you talk about 3 Neutron launches at the prices that we've discussed previously in the $50 to $55 million range, you're looking at potentially equaling in kind of that first year of revenue production for Neutron to equal what Electron is in what it's like 8th year of production. So that kind of just indicates the power that Neutron brings to the model. But we also expect significant growth in our space systems business to continue in 2026. So I would say that we will see a remixing and a rebalancing, and probably recently we've been about a 70-30 mix of space systems to launch. And I think you'll see launch become greater in that mix. I don't think it'll become necessarily more than 50% of the overall mix if you look into 2026. But I think longer term, Pete and I always talked about we like having that kind of 2/3, 1/3 space system to launch mix, just given the lumpiness that launch naturally has, given customer readiness and so forth. So I think right now we're kind of in a sweet spot. I think we're going to probably over-index a little bit to launch as Neutron scales, and then I think over time we'll kind of balance that back out to our ideal mix of kind of 2/3 space system, 1/3 launch.
Got it. That's super helpful, guys. Really appreciate that. Maybe just a quick follow-up. On space systems, Can you maybe just remind us, what are some key awards or key catalysts that we can look for this year, or maybe things that are not necessarily reflected in the backlog? Thank you.
Yeah, Andre, as Adam kind of mentioned in the call, the kind of programs that we chase are not little programs. We chase fairly significant programs, and as a result, it kind of creates a little bit of lumpiness in the backlog. Obviously we've been very competitive on the FDA mission, so we'll continue to bid on those. There's a whole bunch of new missions that have been created relatively recently to do with the Iron Dome that we think we're well placed for as well. So, we'll continue to do the things and bid on the things that make sense. It's fair to say though that there is also some uncertainty in the industry under the new administration in the Defence Force about which programs are getting accelerated and which programs are getting slowed down. So we just sort of have to roll with that a little bit.
Wonderful, super helpful again, and congratulations on the quarter. I'll pass it on.
Your next question comes from the line of Suji DeSilva of Roth Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, Peter. Hi, Adam. Congratulations on naming a boat, Adam. So the Neutron cost, I just want to understand if it's still your expectation as Neutron takes its first launch that some of those stair step down. And if so, would that be kind of concurrently with the first launch, lag a little, perhaps lead as it kind of the spend is ahead? Any color there would be helpful.
Yeah, I can take a pass at that first part, and then Pete can jump in. So when you think about Neutron costs, obviously this first test launch is an R&D launch. There won't be any revenue associated with that launch. And so as you look forward, of course, there's going to be, as we get some production efficiencies as you move from the first tail to the second tail to the third tail, that's always important. But I think the more meaningful thing, obviously, and the big focus item for us to really get the Neutron economics to come into focus is really reusability. And so, Pete introduced the barge earlier today, and yeah, I like the name of that. Certainly, your return on investment is exactly what that barge is intended to do. But it's really about how quickly can we stick that first landing, right? So again, we're not going to attempt it on the first one. The question is, when do we feel comfortable to attempt it? And then when we do, if we're successful, putting that booster into reuse and going just as kind of we've seen SpaceX do. You hopefully you get to reuse it a few times, and then maybe as you learn more, you can ultimately reuse that booster as we designed it to use at least 20 times. And really, when you start to amortize the cost of that expensive booster over a significant number of launches, that's really where the margin expansion comes into. So the cost of a Neutron launch is really going to be dictated far and away by, more than anything else, reusability. And I don't know if Pete wants to add anything to that.
No, you said it. You said it exactly what I was going to say. Is that is a critical element, and the only bit to add is that the way that Neutron is designed, of course, is to burden the most amount of cost into that first stage as possible of the vehicle, because we are in fact reusing it. So that's been an important design element for the vehicle.
Okay, great. And my other question's on the new product, the Flatellite product. It seems like this is your entry into satellite constellation satellites. Wondering if there's a cost per satellite advantage you may have with the architecture versus what's currently in the marketplace or what's planned from competitors, competitive offerings, or how else we should think about the advantages of this product as constellations become and constellation economics become a big part of putting this in space.
No, that's a great question. So generally, the way the conversations go is how fast can you make it, and then how cheap is it? That's generally the order of events. And being so vertically integrated, we really shine on how fast you can make it, because basically over the years we've just slowly been integrating more and more stuff and building more and more things in house. So that gives us a huge edge. And then, of course, because we're building rockets and large structures and equipment, we just have a tremendous amount of capability, whether it be machine shops or composites, or you name it, robotics. We just have a huge amount of capability to really execute on. And this is I guess, where I think to really be a large competitive player in this industry, as I've always said, you have to have your ability to build satellites at scale, and you have to be able to have the ability to launch at scale. And launches getting done with Neutron, and I'd say we're very far down the path now with space systems, and the introduction of Flatellite is really a combination of a number of years' work to get a product that can truly be very low cost and very high volume.
Okay. Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Adam.
Cheers.
Your next question comes from the line of Trevor Walsh of Citizens JMP. Please go ahead.
Great. Hey, gents, thanks for taking the question. Just to piggyback off that Flatellite question, Peter, is there? I think the deck said there was flexibility around the payload, and just in kind of looking how you're going to have the sort of stacking mix there within Neutron. Are there any limitations around the payload or like type of payload? I'm thinking more kind of in the Earth sensing kind of the Earth observation type realm as far as cameras and such.
Yeah, that's a great question, Trevor. So, I mean, the flat structure doesn't lend itself to large optical apertures, that's for sure, like big telescopes. But basically everything else, it's super ideal for. So, we do, the way the structure is designed is we do have flexibility to grow the payload bay depth and array sizes pretty easily. It's like think of it like a ladder backpack onto those structures. So, we can shrink and grow the various payloads pretty easily. So, we've really given a lot of thought to, not only what our customers are asking us now, but future-proof in their design so that we can, address a number of different applications with it.
Great, awesome. Appreciate the color. And then maybe Adam, one quick follow-up for you. Around the R&D headcount increases and maybe more specific to Neutron, would the plan for those kind of heads be to kind of stay within the Neutron family, or would they be able to be tasked and used kind of broader around launch or even into space systems? Just trying to get a sense of kind of, again, around the cost question for Neutron, if headcount requirements kind of once the first launch goes abate a little bit, and just how that kind of, again, more headcount employee type base kind of costs around the build out kind of might flow. Thanks.
Yeah, I'd encourage you to think more of it in terms of kind of how does the P&L morph over time. And I think certainly as we get past the first launch, you'll see R&D begin to subside pretty significantly. Now, a lot of the heads, if we kind of take our past experience and kind of extrapolate that out, we tend to hire very talented kind of athletes, if you will, in engineering functions, which can do lots of different things. And so you find people that are, super effective doing R&D work, and then they pivot over to production and they kind of work on, production engineering, ME type of support work. So I wouldn't think so much of kind of, elimination as much as repurposing from R&D into production, because as you're ramping a new vehicle, there's still R&D type of elements and kind of skills that are necessary to kind of bring that vehicle into its mature state. So that's the way I would encourage it. So certainly we expect a significant step down in R&D, but those heads just really kind of, or the expense related to those types of heads really move into cost of sales at that point. And I'll maybe let Pete speak to the mix if he has any different views. But certainly, I think the one thing that's key is, aside from the heads, certainly prototyping expenses will drop significantly. And a lot of what we're spending our money on today for Neutron is prototyping expense, which is flowing through R&D.
Yeah, I think you said it well, Adam. Nothing to add there further.
All right.
Great. Thanks both. Appreciate the questions.
Your next question comes from the line of Michael Leshock of KeyBanc Capital Markets. Please go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for taking my question. I wanted to start on the Archimedes hot fires. You've you significantly increased your testing cadence there, and the fire looks very clean. So really good to see that. And just wondering if you could touch on any of the changes that you've made to the propulsion system since the initial hot fire last August, and kind of where does Archimedes sit today in terms of readiness for the first launch and meeting or exceeding your performance requirements?
Yeah, hey Michael, good questions. So yep, no, we're running the engines, just all the time. A qualification program, it covers a lot of different run conditions, and it's not like the engine just needs to start on the ground once and ascend. We have a whole bunch of other run conditions where the propellant needs to sit for a while and do the re-entry and landing burns. Then, of course, the stage 1 engine is the same as stage 2, so you've got big coast periods and relights. So the qualification campaign is pretty big. I'm pretty happy with the engine, to be fair. The changes that we made, to remove mass, were in large part to increase production ability. Whenever you design something and you put it in production, you inevitably find the things that you don't like. So being agile enough at this stage to change the various things we want to is the right time to do it. It gets harder once the engine's all qualified, and the team's just working through it. And we added that extra cell for the very reason is just a tremendous amount of testing to get through and tweaking, and so we're just kind of hammering away at it.
Okay, great. And maybe shifting to Electron, if we look longer term at Electron's launch prospects, if LC1 can provide 120 launch opportunities annually, and then maybe another 12 at LC2, is the strategy, are you looking to max out the launch capacity with maybe over 100 plus launches per year, or does the supply-demand environment create a more attractive business model at maybe 30 or 40 Electrons per year? Just wondering where that sweet spot is for Electron launches as we look out 3 to 5 plus years down the road.
Yeah, good question. So I mean, my answer is as many as possible, right? That's what we want to see. When we developed LC1 and we had to license that site, we obviously never wanted to be constrained by the licensing on that site. So we just thought of the biggest number we could back in 2016, and that's that. So we have plenty of capacity there, and even the capacity, even though we've got 12 capacity out of LC2, that can be amended and improved. So that's not that much of a constraint either. But it's really just the market demand, and the good news is it continues to grow year on year. Every year we sell more Electrons than the previous year, which is great. But that's really the driving factor behind it. And as we look out, in the following years, we've seen strong growth in Electron sales year on year.
Appreciate all the color and congrats on all the milestones in the quarter.
Thanks, Michael.
Your next question comes from the line of Jason Gursky of Citi. Please go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Hey, Peter, recognizing that space is hard, you guys are running aggressive timelines to your own admission on the Neutron. Maybe you could just walk us through the things that have caused the delays at each point. So I think we had push from the second half of 24 into mid 25, now into the second half of 25. What are you seeing that is causing you to make those changes?
Yeah. Thanks, Jason. Well, I mean, firstly, if we stand back and look at the context of the timeline of a rocket program, this is still crazy fast compared to just about any historic rocket program. So there is there's that. It was always good to anchor on that. But look, there's no one thing. It's not like we had a giant engine failure or a tank failure or anything like that. There's no one thing. I would say probably the most frustrating thing is some of the large structures and third-party providers we always end up having to pull stuff in-house because we get let down by a number of providers. And I'd say that's caused a bit of delay. Early in the program, it's fair to say that we had to deal with some kind of COVID issues, so we just couldn't get concrete and we couldn't get steel, couldn't buy CNC machines. Those things had really long lead times associated with them. Now, of course, that's not the case now, but that sort of got us off to a little bit of a slow start. But there's no like one big thing that's just sort of got in the road. We continue to push hard, and there's, like I say, there's no giant thing. And if something put its leg well out of bed, then of course we would let everybody know. But at the moment, we're just sort of just eating away at it.
Yeah. And you mentioned suppliers. How much dependency do you have at this point to get this all wrapped up? Is this 90% under your control at this point? Do you still have some dependencies with suppliers?
Yeah, well, as we transition into rate production of the product, we have that much more under our roof. When you're building large steel structures and launch sites and things like that, you don't have that in-house capability to do those kinds of things. The early prototypes were hand laid rather than being made on the AFP machine, which is now of course up and running and commissioned. So some of those things delay, but there's just some practicalities around doing things for one-off. It doesn't make sense to build all that capability in-house. But I'd say as time goes on and as rate production starts to increase, we become far less reliant on those external contractors.
Right. Okay. I've got just a few more quick ones, if you'll humor me. On the pipeline in space systems. Yeah, in space systems in the pipeline, I'm just kind of curious what you are seeing and what the shape of that business might look like in the future. And I'm thinking about it split between you being the OEM or the kind of the prime building the full spacecraft versus you being a supplier into others. What do you see out there? Are you guys going to end up being more of a components business, more of an OEM? Is it going to be a 50-50 split? I'm just kind of curious what you're seeing.
Well, I think our aspiration, Jason, is we want to provide the service. So a higher tier than certainly just building the satellite, and the higher tier again just providing the components. But the beauty of the way that we run the business is that we can fiercely bid on a program that we want to go after. And even if we don't win, we still end up kind of winning because chances are we'll have some content and components in many of those larger programs. But certainly there's a few things we're going after, right? One is very very large U.S. government programs, which we think we have some very discriminating technologies or capabilities. And then, of course, other large commercial constellations and programs which you've seen us execute against as well. And always, we like to have a NASA science mission on the books as well. So, we've generally had a moon mission, a Mars mission, or something on the books because we believe that's important to create technologies and for the company. So you'll see those consistent sort of programs going out. But I mean, where we're really trying to get to is providing the service, not just providing components or subsystems or satellite buses.
Right. So then that Adam, I'll get you involved here really quickly then. So your comment about 2/3, 1/3, 2/3 on the services and 1/3 on launch. Does that include this third leg that you are all planning to stand up at some point, the services part of the business? I'm trying to figure out whether you're going to be adding a new segment at some point, or if that services part where you're going to be operating constellations will be a part of the space systems business, and that 2/3, 1/3 mix is kind of what you were kind of gets encapsulated into that.
Yeah, well, I think given the overall much larger size of the opportunity on the application side, I would expect that to fundamentally change that overall mix, right? I think that just if we kind of look at and we've articulated the total addressable market opportunity in each segment, launch, we've articulated it's roughly a $10 billion TAM. Systems and subsystems around satellites are around a $30 billion TAM, and then the applications is perhaps an order of magnitude of that. So really, I think over time, the 2/3, 1/3 was really a function of kind of the business as it exists today without that third leg of the stool. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I confirmed that. Yeah. Didn't want people to be hanging on that word. And then two last really quick ones. Tariffs. Next Tuesday could be a big day. Do you have any exposure to Canada or Mexico in particular? I'm thinking, there's some guys up in Canada that make antennas. I don't know if you're reliant on them. I'm just kind of curious. If you're performing against firm fixed price contracts where some of your inputs might be going up in price as a result of some tariffs that come into the fold next week.
Yeah, I mean, I can make some comment there, and then
go ahead.
And then I'll pass it. Yeah. So obviously we have Sinclair Interplanetary, so they're a Toronto-based reaction wheels and star tracker business unit up there. So we do have some exposure. But maybe Adam, you're probably best placed on some of the financial questions.
Yeah, Jason, we really don't have a lot of exposure. We certainly have our reaction wheels and star tracker and sun sensor business that we acquired several years ago up in Toronto. But I would say that doesn't really. I would say we don't do mass volume production of those solutions, especially the reaction wheels in Canada. Those take place actually in New Zealand. And certainly with our MDA Global Star situation where we actually do the buses and then we ship the buses to Montreal for AIT, it's really going from the U.S. to Canada. And there's, I'm sure there's a lot of intricacies around kind of how you value those systems they go across that border. But right now, I'd say, look, we don't see tariffs as impacting us, significantly at this point. I think we're pretty fortunate that the majority of our, I'd say, intensity within the company is really between the U.S. and New Zealand.
Right. Okay, great. I'll leave it there. I appreciate the time, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Your next question comes from the line of Eric Rasmussen of Stifel. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, guys, for taking the questions. Maybe just on the Flatellite, the new satellite, low-cost satellite. What is the throughput expectation for that? And do you have sort of the infrastructure to support your aspirations in that new opportunity?
Yeah, hey Eric. So the throughput of that is designed to be a couple of satellites a week up to a satellite a day, depending on the customer or the opportunity that we go after. We've got some pretty. Well, you've been to some of the facilities. The headquarters building, which is now basically a satellite manufacturing facility, has ample kind of space to be able to execute that. And if you look across all the subsystems, there's in many areas we've already scaled, whether it be solar or reaction wheel. So in some of those systems we provide to some of the larger constellations already. So those things are already being produced at scale. But as far as final integration, I mean, we stand up and bring down lines for spacecraft, now relatively frequently, depending on what the customer needs. So, I would say that the vast majority of the capability exists.
Great. And then maybe just on Neutron, the push out, and it really, again, it doesn't sound like a whole big change. I mean, I think you were talking about the last update was no earlier than mid-2025, and I think everyone was just so focused on just mid-25. But here it's second half. But what I guess how achievable is this at this point? I mean, do you consider this less of a stretch goal than sort of where we were the last time when you made the no earlier than 2025 estimate?
Yeah, no, feels about the same, to be honest with you, Eric. I mean, if in a few months here and there, it's really in the noise. But we just want to be as transparent as we can where we see things. And but yeah, look, I mean, what we're trying to bring here to market in this vehicle in such a short time frame, it's like I say, it's kind of in the noise. But yeah, we've been transparent.
Okay. Maybe then on Electron, have you seen any changes in customer behavior or demand that maybe suggest things are slower than what you expected? Because I think I recall for this year, we were maybe looking at around 26 launches, but it sounds like you're expecting around 20 or so launches for this year. Any sort of comments you can make on that?
Well, I think we're just being a little bit more cautious this year because we had a a big manifest last year and we launched everything that turned up. So and that's the reality of the Electron product. That's why people pay the premium, is because they get to launch when they need to launch. So we have a really strong sales year last year and so far this year for Electron. As you saw, we added a bunch more this year alone. And we continue to see growth in that product. So it certainly doesn't feel like it's slowing down from our perspective, but I think it's certainly the sales cycles and sales aren't. But I think we're always a little bit cautious because in promising how many launches we're going to do, because it's just not in our control.
Yeah, and Eric, I would focus on just the growth in the backlog, and I think the thing that gives us encouragement is the fact that we're seeing increasing size of the contracts that we're signing with customers as far as numbers of launches. It's in new areas as well, so that Electron business is diversifying now, particularly with HASTE. So we've got diversity increasing in the business, absolute increase in scale, and with that, increasing ASPs. And as we've talked about many times before across various conferences and venues, this business it's a scale business, right? You have to, the more you can absorb those standing costs across a greater number of units, your economics get much better. And that's actually what we see playing out over the coming quarters, is as we continue to scale the launch cadence, the margins benefit significantly as you just get to absorb those relatively static fixed costs over a greater number of units. So yeah, I agree with Pete. I don't think there's nothing that I see when we have our demand assessment, kind of reviews internally that would say this market's slowing down at all. In fact, I think kind of adding that HASTE leg to the stool, I think has been super helpful and encouraging, because that's a very strategic need that's being met in a unique way by this vehicle. Yeah, I think we're very encouraged by what we see.
Great. I just want to maybe bounce back to Neutron real quick. With this updated timeline, are you still within sort of the framework of being able to support NSSL? Maybe just talk about that timeline in relation to sort of your new update.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we were working alongside the Space Force and have done for many years, and no, it won't affect that the ability to on ramp. I mean, the criteria is a credible path to launch by the end of the year, and by all measures of that, I think we're fine.
Great, thank you.
Your next question comes from the line of Andre Madrid of BTIG. Please go ahead.
Hey, everyone. Good afternoon, and thanks for the question. Yeah, I mean, to touch back on space apps, I know this has always kind of been on in the background, even going back to when you guys first went public in 2021. Given that you're comfortable unveiling the Flatlight platform today, could you maybe walk us through how you'd expect this application to materially contribute to the business through the years? Maybe, when we could see a meaningful step up of any measure?
Yeah, hey, Andre. Well, I mean, look, it's kind of difficult to talk about that. I mean, the most important thing really is Neutron, because if we take our friends over at SpaceX, and the Starlink constellation, Starlink is a great satellite, but the real needle mover there was high frequency, low cost launch. That's why Neutron is so important. So we kind of methodically, step by step, creating all of the right ingredients to be able to build constellations at scale. But a really important element of that is Neutron, and while that's occurring in the background, we've just, like I say, just methodically building the capability to, on the spacecraft side.
Yep. No, that's a good point. I appreciate you highlighting that. And then maybe if I may, follow up, looking at the true backlog mix. I know Adam touched on this before, but it's 50-50 commercial defense / national security. But I mean, given that like you said, most of the, or a sizable portion of commercial is bound for defense and national security customers. What's the true mix, do you think?
It's probably, I would say probably more like 70-30. What do you think, Adam?
Maybe even higher than that. I think it's probably closer to north of 80% would be where the end, I'd say, consumption of the data coming off the things that we launch get consumed in one way or other by a government, whether it's U.S. government or other governments. If you look at again, a lot of the, Electron's a really popular vehicle for remote sensing capabilities. And again, a lot of those customers, it used to be people were saying that, counting cars in Walmart parking lots was going to be the killer app for Earth observation. That clearly wasn't the case. It ends up being selling, much of what gets generated from these commercial constellations to the U.S. government for, national security, weather, and other types of capability, other types of data. So, yeah, I think it's probably north of 80% would be my guess, but it's just a guess.
Got it. No, that's helpful color. I'll leave it there. Thanks, Peter and Adam.
Thank you.
Thanks.
There are no further questions at this time. With that, I will now turn the call back over to Sir Peter Beck for final closing remarks. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much. And before we close out today, there are some up-and-coming conferences that we'll be attending, shown below. We look forward to sharing more exciting news and updates with you. Otherwise, thanks for joining us. That wraps up today's call, and we look forward to speaking with you again about the exciting progress being made at Rocket Lab. Thanks very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes your conference call.
Okay, so that does it. So what do you guys think of the quarter? Let's say there was a ton unexpected other than the flatellite, I guess. I don't think any of us saw that one coming, and it is an exciting new piece for space systems. Backlog ended up being pretty flat. They said like 1.06 billion, and we were around something like 1.04, 1.05, I think, before. So virtually flat. I was kind of hoping we might see some announcement of like another deal on the space system side of things, building a few more satellites. We didn't get that, unfortunately. I think markets might have been maybe a little surprised by the guidance for Q1 in terms of just how much they're planning to burn in order to, continue bringing Neutron along. Obviously, Peter is very confident they have water at Wallops. I don't know if you guys saw the short report. One of the items they highlighted, it says they won't be able to get water at Wallops, even though it's on an island. But he says they will get water. So yeah, there's that. Big new contract for Electron, at least 20 launches in 2025. And I think they're kind of being very conservative on that. I think probably internally they would expect to get at least 26, but they just want to be safe. That's just my estimate. Neutron, yeah, my guess of a November launch, I think, still stands for me. No concerns on NSSL there, as long as there's a credible path to launching by the end of the year. Not huge news, and I guess I'm not shocked by the stock movement lower, but we're really just at a wait and see point here for potable water. That's true. But anyway, Peter says they'll have water, so I'll have to believe him on that one. Where is the stock price? We are at 1680, so yeah, down a solid 15%. Obviously, a rough day and a rough few weeks, but if you've been in the stock, yeah, we've been through this before. If you're new, sorry that you ended up buying at a rough time. Yeah, I did say I kind of stopped my buys because it went up so far so fast, and I was a little worried on valuation. But now that we have guidance on what's coming, and I think if we look at my notes here, yeah, let me just check what they said. So 50% of the backlog, where is it, to be realized within the next 12 months in terms of revenue? That should give us a very good idea of what kind of revenue we're expecting in 2025. Minus, of course, any contracts they sign and actually realize revenue on during the year. But that will give us a baseline idea, and I plan to dive back into my spreadsheets shortly, update these numbers versus where I was predicting them was actually pretty close, but think about the future, how the revenue is going to grow long term. Personally, as I said many times, I'm a long-term investor and I'm looking 5 years plus out. So when I look out that far, when we're talking having a Neutron launching regularly, having their own constellation announced, hopefully Space Systems continues to grow, Electron launching at mid-20s plus per year with a gross margin of approaching 50%, maybe 45, 50%. The business looks very different at that point, right? But right now we're still in the point where they have to spend a lot of money, and the spend is ramping up as they push to get Neutron launching. So yeah, it's kind of just the no man's land where we're spending so much money for something that hasn't happened yet. And I think, you got to hold through these times. So if we continue to drop, maybe I will stop my pause in adding shares. And if it drops more, personally, I might think about buying. I do have quite a large position and not a ton of cash on hand personally. Always interested to hear what you guys are doing. I might consider looking at selling puts. Sometimes I like to try and generate additional income doing that sort of thing if the premiums are attractive for the strike price that you're looking at and expiration date. So those kind of things could be on the table as we look at a falling stock price as well. And let me see what your comments are lately. Feels like a buying opportunity. Why is the ship named Return on Investment? I think Adam Spice got to name that, and they just want to emphasize that they want their return on investment and to be financially, a good deal and do well. Someone bought a put and they're going to sell it market open. So I'm sure you did very well on your put. Good job on that. A bit afraid of the current situation. Yeah, that's the other thing right now, right? Is we're into a situation now where the overall markets are down. We've got a lot of tariff worries going on. We got a lot of politics and strange things right now. So everything's up in the air. You got inflation in the mix, and we'll have to see what happens. It's not all moving just based on what Rocket Lab's doing. A lot of it is just the overall markets and nothing to do with Rocket Lab themselves. The report came out, I think, 2 days ago, Wes, maybe 3 days ago. I did read through it, and yeah, I do think I'll probably give it a more thorough look in the future, but some of it I was like, I don't know. They're interviewing people who work at other companies and asking them what they think about Rocket Lab's timelines and whether they'll actually hit those timelines and stuff like that. And a lot of, unnamed sources and stuff. So I always question how much you can really trust it, especially from someone who openly has a short position on the stock. Tricky D, do you expect dilution to be required? Again, I think they have enough money to get Neutron going. If they want to make a significant acquisition, then yes, perhaps we do need more dilution. Adam said at a recent conference that they would like to keep their cash balance above 300 million because if they have some big long lead time projects with the government, those people tend to get nervous about giving out contracts to companies that don't have that much cash on hand. So if it drops below 300 million, they would think about raising. I think now we're looking at something like 484. They had been burning like 30 million a quarter or something. So that should give you an idea. Maybe it was more 40 million. And we do expect pretty significant cash burn in Q1 as well. So the cash balance will continue to drop. They do have a lot of cash, but it will continue to drop. Hopefully, if they launch Neutron on time, they don't need to raise any money. But the company did kind of hint that it's, not out of the question. Although, of course, now that the stock price drops, that does make it a little less attractive as well and would result in more dilution for shareholders. Boat was surprising, was nice to see. Yeah, nothing super surprising in this earnings call. Some people felt the energy was a bit lower. I don't know if I'd agree with that. I think it sounded pretty normal. Yeah, Neutron later in 2025. So it sounded like they were trying to tiptoe around officially announcing a delay and just kind of tweak the wording without anyone asking any follow-up questions, maybe, which is a little strange. But then, yeah, they did get the follow-up questions and said, yeah, they're thinking maybe things are tracking a little slower and it's a matter of months. So it's not a huge deal to them. Back to 13. Who says we're back to 13? Maybe in a different currency or something. But yeah, I'm seeing 17.20 right now in the after hours. It's going to be an interesting next few days on the markets. Yeah, as I said, Tricky, I think you're right. He's never like super high energy, extremely caffeinated or anything like that on earnings calls. He's very, yeah. Thoughts on current fair value, Gerard? I think I will have a much better answer to that soon in a new video as I kind of put in the numbers we received today into my spreadsheets and then tweak how I think their revenues are going to grow and, what kind of their earnings will look like in 5 years out and kind of back that into today's dollars. I was thinking, I think I didn't make a secret of it, especially when I've said before that I wasn't buying, that I was thinking I was a little uncomfortable with the price up at $30. So we're starting to get into a range where I'd be more interested in buying shares. But yeah, a lot will depend on going through those spreadsheets in the coming days. And I'll be sure to make a video about that and share my complete thoughts on, the valuation. I will say, I think rocket companies do always trade at a premium, whether that is SpaceX or anyone else. For whatever reason, they do command a premium. So I don't think Rocket Lab should be any different in that regard. And the vision is great. The long-term future sounds amazing to me. It's just when you talk about, the valuation today, whether it's cheap or not, that's kind of the question. Get my eggs on discount. Yeah, Kiwis are pretty chilled, and I think Peter is pretty chill on the earnings call. It was at least a little bit less long on the Q&A this time around compared to last one. So with that, I will ask if you guys are still with me and not currently a subscriber, please do consider subscribing. Very helpful for the channel, and thank you to everyone who is already subscribed. I'll take any last questions you guys want before we get to go? Any other thoughts you guys might have or want to share? I'll leave a few more minutes for that. Otherwise, I've already been online over 2 hours now, so a bit of a long stream. Yeah, all about the long-term future for me as well. I just try to, basically what I tend to do is try to buy when I think it's cheap and try to sell never. That's usually my plan, because timing the tops, timing the bottoms, very difficult. And yeah, hit the like button as well. What do I think the Flatellite is for? I think it could be for a wide variety of constellations. They're open to selling it to other people, as they've said, to operate constellations and obviously their own. Clearly, I've been saying for ages, I don't think they're doing Earth observation, and now we think we can completely put that idea to bed. I don't think they're going to be doing Earth observation, so that means this satellite is probably something more communications related or like back channel data relay type thing. Maybe they do partner with someone to get access to some spectrum. Clearly, the coinciding of their earnings call with Global Star's earnings call didn't amount to anything. We didn't have any kind of a joint announcement, so there was some speculation on that, but it was just a coincidence, which is kind of what I thought as well. Thank you, George, by the way, for joining the team. Very much appreciated. Looks like a buying opportunity. Any economic turbulence? Yeah, it could be a buying opportunity. One thing I feel like I've learned, man, is that I feel like when you think things are low, they can always go lower. I remember last time, this is years ago now, last time I was buying the dip on Rocket Lab, I kind of thought, okay, it's not going any lower than 4.2. And then I added a bunch of shares. And then sure enough, it goes down to like 3.5. And then I'm like, wow, I really wish I had some more ammunition here to buy more here. So one thing I've tried to do is recognize stocks can always run lower than I think they should, and they can always run higher than I think they should. I never thought it would run to 30 in 2024. I had a 30 price target several more years out. And I never thought it should go to 3.5 in 2023, 2022. So it can go overshoot both ways. So I'm going to watch the stock in the coming days and see what I can do. It's still my number one position in my portfolio, my number one company. So it also depends on, how you like to organize your portfolio, how much weight you like in a single company, how diversified you like to be, and all that kind of stuff, which is, different for every investor in their own financial situation and when they'll need money. Yeah, exactly, RW. And, eventually, I just, believe in the long term of the company, but over the short term, it's always very hard to predict and very volatile. Tips on borrowing to invest. Risky. What can I say? Like, it's a risky move. It can pay off. I can't advise people to do it, especially on a forum like this, because I just worry people will do it in an irresponsible way. I've done it before when we had like massive market crashes, but when I was borrowing to invest, what I did is I bought some dividend stocks where the dividends, and these were very safe banks, but we had such a massive crash that the bank dividends were paying out at like 8%, and Canadian banks are generally very stable, very safe, reliable. So I borrowed some money on margin to buy bank stocks because I knew the dividend would more than pay for my interest fees, and I was confident that long term they wouldn't be that low. And obviously I did very well. I was right on that one, but it's always very risky. Like, I can't advise you to just go ham and use all your margin, because on days like today, if you're margin to the hilt, that's when you really get screwed. And then you're forced to sell on a day like today because the value in your account drops, so the amount you're allowed to borrow drops, and that's exactly when you don't want to sell. So very risky move to buy these highly volatile stocks on margin. If I do it, I will tell you guys, but I don't think I would be doing it anytime soon. Only if like things get incredibly insane and Rocket Lab goes to a level that I just can't believe, would I consider doing it. Yeah, Tetram, don't borrow to invest is generally the good advice for most investors, especially if you're less experienced at it. Price estimation end of 2025. I mean, your guess is really as good as mine on that one. It's depends on so many things. Not even just Rocket Lab, the overall markets, tariffs, inflation. Obviously, Neutron launching will be very big. I mean, look, if Neutron launches right at the end of 2025, maybe we get some massive excitement around the stock and it runs up. You never know. My my thesis for the past couple of years is that I expected a big bump in the stock price when the company turned positive, as well as around Neutron launch. So when a Neutron launches, you expect the company to kind of get towards EBITDA positive and cash flow positive over the next, say, 2-3 quarters following that is kind of my general expectation. So I was always thinking we would get the big move for Rocket Lab stock around Neutron launch, and then going cash flow positive would be a huge catalyst. But we had this massive run that I did not predict. And like, obviously I don't know everything because I didn't predict the massive run to 30 so soon. So it ran up before I was ready, actually. And I was thinking of buying more, and it ran away from me back in like September. So it is what it is, but those are the catalysts I'm kind of looking out for, which is maybe later this year and mid next year, we start to look at going cash flow positive. At that point, I think Wall Street likes it. You start to get a lot less risk in the stock because people don't worry about dilution as much or having to go out of business. And then, you have actual earnings per share that people look at that grow, and it just gets a lot of excitement. And I've seen it with other stocks. When Tesla went cash flow positive, when Palantir went positive, they had like massive jumps. So that's kind of what I was expecting for Rocket Lab as well. Yeah, a few months, not a huge deal, but that's what we're looking at right now. Now down in the 16s after hours. We'll see where we open tomorrow. Timeline, yeah, he's kind of said for launching their own constellation, they need Neutron to be launching regularly. So I expect a couple of years from that, once Neutron is more spooled up and they get a cadence going of, 6+, 10+ per year is when they really start going ham on their own constellation, building their own satellites and getting things ready to go, giving us some more info. I don't think they want to tip their hand too early. They don't want SpaceX and others to know what they plan to do and have other people try to beat them to the punch. I think they learned that lesson the hard way as well. And yeah, thank you for all the likes, guys, as well. Much appreciated. Any other stock sectors you're interested in? Yeah, I liked having exposure to AI. I do own NVIDIA. I've owned it for a while. I've owned Tesla for a while, kind of down on Tesla lately, but I do think robotaxi and robots will be big eventually. So I've just been holding long-term on that one as well. Still up a lot on Tesla. I also have my index funds. A little while ago, I bought HIMS, if you're not familiar with that. I bought the stock. It's kind of funny how it went. I bought it around $30 per share because I thought it seemed like a good deal. Wasn't expecting a big run so soon. Then it ran up to 60 in like a month after I bought it. So then I sold half my shares and figured, okay, I'll basically take my cost basis out of it and just let the profits ride. And then it dropped back down to the 30s, like 39. So then I bought back in my full position again at 39. And I just basically made, $3,000 in a month on that one. Still have the same amount of shares. But I do think I like HIMS, even though the Ozempic shortage thing is over and people are worried about their weight loss drugs, how much they'll be able to sell those. They're just growing so rapidly. That's not really the focus of the channel, of course, but that's one I do have a small position in that's done well. Thank you, Lucas, as well. And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Okay, I think I am going to call that a stream. It's been quite a while. If you guys have not already, please do hit that subscribe button. Last chance. Thank you to everyone who became a channel member today. We had a ton of you. I'm not going to start naming names just because I know I'll forget someone and then I'll feel bad about that. But you all know who you are, so thank you as well. And you can look out for your name on my intro to my YouTube videos very shortly. Hope you guys are doing okay out there with the big downturn we've had in Rocket Lab. Remember, it's all temporary and it's still a great company that I think is executing well. Firefly IPO, I'm thinking maybe late this year or next year. I was going to talk about that in another video, but I do think a Firefly IPO could be coming in the next year or two. I will say hi to Teddy for you. Is it D Jones? I forget your first name. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. It's a great live stream. We had a great turnout. I definitely appreciate it.